Good afternoon. We had taken a look at transformer basics yesterday. So if you actually look at what we had discussed yesterday, we had first started with what are the applications of transformer, its types, its its applications. We had looked at the basic working of the transformer with Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, and we had derived the voltage equation based on that, where we said that the flux density or flux is proportional to voltage to frequency ratio. We had taken a look at the construction, core type and shell type transformer. We had also taken a look at how exactly an ideal transformer functions, what happens when a load is connected on the secondary side, so how the ampere turn balance takes place between the primary and secondary. Then we had looked at the ideal transformer's functionality under no load and on load condition, how a load that is ZL connected on the secondary side can be transported to transform to the primary side. That also we took a look. Then we had taken a look at the actual transformer and specifically with respect to the no load condition, which is core losses. So let us probably go back to what we discussed in terms of core losses. So we said that basically core losses has two components. One is hysteresis loss and the other one is eddy current loss. These are the two things we were talking about. And in hysteresis loss, we fundamentally said that hysteresis loss is proportional to the area under BH curve. That is what we said. And we also said that when we actually did the derivation, whatever we got as the area under the BH curve was in terms of joules per cycle per meter cube. So if we actually say what is hysteresis loss, we can write this as area under BH curve multiplied by volume of the core multiplied by cycles per second or frequency. So that is why we ultimately said hysteresis loss is proportional to frequency, whereas eddy current loss is proportional to frequency square. So if we increase the frequency, both these losses are going to increase. So I would say core losses in general increase with frequency. So frequency, if it is increased, core losses are going to increase correspondingly. So much so for core losses. Now let us try to look at the transformer. We said that non-ideal transformer, that is compared to the ideal transformer case, in the case of a non-ideal transformer, mainly we took into account four factors, if you may recall. One was finite permeability. So we said that magnetizing current is not equal to zero. It is a finite value. That is the first point we impressed upon. The second point what we made last time was there are core losses. So we are going to have hysteresis and eddy current losses. Then the third point that we are going to probably look at is resistances are there for the winding. These resistances are essentially for the copper winding that are placed in the form of primary and secondary winding. So what are going to be the effects of this? We'll have to look at that. And the next one that we want to actually talk about is leakages, leakage flux. So these are the 4 points that we need to talk about. These two have already been discussed. We will try to look at the third point and the fourth point now. So let us say this is our transformer. I am taking a core type construction. We have one winding here, which is the primary winding. This is our secondary winding. So I'm going to actually connect the load here. This load, let me call it as ZL. Let's say the current that is flowing is I2. That is going to make another reflection current here. Let me call that as I1. Here is the voltage that I am applying as V1. Now this is going to set up a flux definitely in the core like this, which is shown in this green line. We assume that this entire flux is going only through the core because the core permeability is high. But although the core permeability is high, it's not infinity. So mu may be like mu R multiplied by mu naught is mu, which is the permeability of the material. Mu R may be 4000 or more. This is how it will be. So if it is 4000, if I assume that there are 4000 lines going through the core, still there will be 1 or 2 lines which may be coming through the air gap path. And this flux does not link with the secondary winding, so we call this as the leakage flux. So leakage fluxes are those which do not link with the secondary winding. If it is only belonging to primary, it will only induce an EMF in the primary. There is no induction in the secondary. So the leakage flux will be small if mu R is large. Mu R is large, all right, but still I'm going to have at least a few lines leaking like this, and this is not going to contribute towards the voltage induction on the secondary side. That is the major problem. Now this leakage flux always takes the path through the air gap. So air gap between the limbs of the transformer. Okay, this is the path for leakage flux. So there is no question of any saturation for leakage flux. Leakage flux will always be corresponding to the air gap. So there is no question of any saturation. Because of this, if I actually look at how much is the induced EMF due to leakage flux. So due to leakage flux, what is the induced EMF? If I try to look at it, I should say it, if I just say that the leakage flux is whatever is the current that is flowing through the primary winding divided by the reluctance of the leakage path. This is going to be the flux, leakage flux of the primary. Similarly, I should be able to write the leakage flux of the secondary as, I can say that it is N2 multiplied by I2 divided by R. This is the leakage corresponding to secondary. Let me write this as R2. Maybe I can write this as R1. So I'm going to have these two as the two leakage fluxes. Now you can very clearly see that this leakage flux drop is going to be proportional to all the flux is proportional to I1. And if I try to look at the drop is going to be, if I call this as phi L1, this as phi L2. So I'm going to have d phi L1 by dt will be the leakage flux induced EMF. Similarly, I should be able to write d phi L2 by dt as the induced EMF in secondary due to leakage flux. So, in general, what I can say is as the current increases either in I1 or I2, correspondingly the leakage flux drop or the induced EMF is going to increase. So what I can do is to represent this voltage drop, that is the primary leakage flux voltage drop, as well as the secondary leakage flux voltage drop, as being proportional to two reactances. So I can say that this is equal to I1 multiplied by X1, and I can write this as I2 multiplied by X2. So I should be able to write these two as two leakage drops, because any flux can be represented by a reactance or inductive circuit. So I'm equating this to X1 and X2 respectively. Now, looking at this, what I can do is to first of all draw, this is what is V1 that I am applying. Some amount of flux is getting leaked, which is essentially represented by a reactance drop. Definitely the copper winding also has a resistance. Let me call that as R1. And what is left over here is going to be the one which is contributing to the induced EMF, which will link with the secondary side as well. So I should say this is my E2. Now E1 divided by E2 will correspond to N1 by N2. We had written this is approximately equal to V1 by V2, but now in a real transformer, please understand that these two are going to be my voltage drops. One will correspond to X1, the other one will correspond to R1. So I should say V1 minus R1 plus JX1, because it is a reactance, multiplied by I1, if I may call this as I1, is going to be equal to E1. This is what is going to be the Kirchhoff's voltage law corresponding to the primary side. Similarly, if I try to look at the secondary side, E2 is the induced EMF. I will definitely have a resistance R2, which is the inherent resistance of the secondary winding. This is going to be X2, which is the leakage reactance of the secondary winding. And what is left over, this is what is going to be V2, which is available at the terminals of the transformer. Now here I am going to connect the load. This is what is the actual equivalent circuit of the transformer if I try to look at only the series parameters. So I can again write E1, E2 minus R2 plus JX2 multiplied by I2, or the load current, will be equal to V2, which is the terminal voltage at the secondary winding. So what I can say is basically, if I combine what was the operation in the no load condition and what is the operation currently, I should be able to draw the circuit diagram completely, equivalent circuit diagram. I am applying a voltage of V1 here. I have first of all R1 and X1, which is dropping the voltage. Then after that, I'm going to have a magnetizing reactance Xm. I'm going to have a core loss component of resistance. This whole thing is going to come up here. Let me call this as RC. This is Xm. Now what is available is going to go towards my primary induced EMF, which is E1. Now here I'm going to have the core and I have E2 here. Now this E2 output of the secondary will be passed through the leakage reactance, resistance. So I can call this as R2, this is X2, and what is available here is V2, which will be connected to the load. So this gives me the overall equivalent circuit of the transformer on the whole, if I am looking at both the no load condition as well as the loaded condition. Now that I have got this, let me probably try to, combine the primary and secondary, or transform the impedances on the secondary side to the primary side. One thing you have to remember is transformer is not going to have any variance of power. So input power will be equal to output power. Power is invariant. So if previously we did do this, we actually showed some load on the secondary side, which is ZL. And we said primary side is this. Now in between, we actually said that if this is I1, this is V1, and this is V2, and this is I2, we transform this ZL into the primary side. This is what we did. What is the equivalent impedance visualized from the primary side? This is what we did in the last class, if you may recall. So what we did was that V1 by I1 is the primary side impedance. That we said is equal to, so V1 we wrote it. So this is the Z2, ZL dash, or I can call this as Z1. Either way is fine. ZL dash is the secondary side impedance visualized from the primary side. That will be equal to, so V1 basically we wrote it as V2 into N1 by N2. And similarly I1 we wrote it as I2 into N2 by N1. And then when we took it together, we said V2 by I2 multiplied by N1 by N2 the whole square. This is what we did. And V2 by I2 is ZL. So ZL multiplied by N1 by N2 whole square was our equivalent impedance visualized from the primary side. We are going to use the same concept to get whatever was our equivalent circuit originally. Let me just draw the equivalent circuit again. This is R1, this is X1, we had RC, we had XM, we have connected them together. Now here is my primary side winding, ideal winding, and this is the secondary winding, which is also ideal winding. I'm going to have R2, I'm going to have X2, and here is my load. I'm calling this as ZL. Now I want to transform all these things into the primary side. So for doing that, I have to use the turns ratio. So I can say that this is V1 and this is V2. Now first of all, what I have to do is I can draw R1 and X1 as it is. And I can draw RC and XM also as it is. No problem. Now I have to take this R2 and I'm going to write that as R2 dash. I am going to take this X2 and I'm going to write that as X2 dash. And I'm going to take the load impedance ZL and I'm going to take that as ZL dash when I am referring all of them to the primary side. And I can call this as V1 and let me call this as V2 dash. Now let me write what is V2 dash. V2 dash is equal to V2 multiplied by N1 by N2. R2 dash is going to be equal to R2 multiplied by N1 by N2 the whole square. ZL dash is going to be equal to ZL multiplied by N1 by N2 the whole square, which we just derived. And X2 dash is going to be X2 multiplied by N1 by N2 the whole square. So this becomes my overall equivalent circuit of the transformer. Now what I can do is, because this draws very limited current, I hope you understand that XM corresponds to the magnetizing current branch, and the magnetizing current we said is generally less than 5% of rated current. So if rated current is 100 ampere, I'm going to have 2 or 3 amperes as magnetizing current. So If I try to look at what is the current flowing in the series branch, compared to that, the shunt branch or the parallel branch is going to carry less than 5%. So even if I shift the whole thing to the front, it is not going to matter much. So rough equivalent circuit of the transformer, I can draw somewhat like this. I can simply say that the parallel branch I am shifting to the beginning, XM and RC. And I am applying V1 here. I am going to show the resistance as R1 plus R2 dash. And I am going to show a resistor inductance as X1 plus X2 dash. X2 dash is the equivalent secondary impedance transformed to the primary side. X1 is the primary leakage inductance itself. Both of them we have combined together to make it as a single reactance. Similarly, this resistance is R1 is the primary winding resistance, R2 dash is the secondary winding resistance referred to the primary. So both of them we have combined to make a single resistance. Now here I'm going to connect ZL dash and I'm going to call this as V2 dash. Now the whole thing is essentially the complete equivalent circuit of the transformer. Any questions so far? I hope so far things are clear. If there are any questions, please, you can probably send it through chat, or you can probably raise your, that you have any questions. So let's say this is the complete equivalent circuit of the transformer. Very clearly, this will contribute to losses R1 plus R2 dash. X1 plus X2 dash will contribute to power factor deterioration as well as voltage drop. So if we can minimize this R1 plus R2 dash, that will definitely improve the efficiency. If I can minimize this X1 plus X2 dash, that will definitely contribute towards less voltage drop. So our goal in transformer, if I want to improve the efficiency, improve the voltage output in the transformer, I have to minimize these two. R1 plus R2 dash is the inherent resistance. I can't do much unless it's a thick copper coil. The resistance is going to be somewhat, contributing towards the drop. How can I reduce leakage? So let us look at methods of reducing leakage flux. The first and foremost method is to use shell type construction. In core type construction, I am essentially going to have my core like this. So maybe primary and secondary are not wound in different limbs. I can have this as the portions of primary and these two can be connected in series. No problem. But secondary will also be wound in the same way, and then again I will connect them together too. So I would say that blue color one is primary. So V1 is going to be applied between these two terminals. V2 is going to be tapped out between these two terminals. But still, because the window what is actually existing between the upper limb and the lower limb, it is essentially big and long, because of which there will be definitely lines, leakage lines flowing like this. Rather than that, if I have a shell type construction, so let me show the shell type construction. I'm going to have it somewhat like this. This is what is the shell type construction, right? This is what we showed as shell type construction. So what I'm going to have is the primary is going to be here. Maybe the secondary is going to be here. And I'm going to apply V1 here. And I'm going to tap V2 from here. But because everywhere it is surrounded by iron, most of the lines would try to confine themselves to the iron path only, because wherever it looks, very limited amount of air is there, surrounding air is there. So shell type construction provides a large amount of iron path. And air path is hardly ever available. That's the reason why it is going to reduce the leakage flux. So this is one of the methods of reducing the leakage flux. While transferring equivalent circuit parameters from the primary to secondary and vice versa, there is an assumption that copper losses are equal. Can you please justify? Achha, I can't even see. Can I turn it around? Will it be a problem? Okay. There are two questions here. One is, while transferring the parameters from the primary to secondary and vice versa, there is assumption that copper losses are equal. Can you please justify? See, the copper losses are power losses, and transformer basically works on the principle of power invariance. The power cannot be suddenly generated within the transformer. So whether it is copper losses, whether it is output, everything is basically in the form of power. Because of which you can say that if I look at the copper losses either from the primary side or secondary side, they have to be equal because transformer works on the principle of power invariance. There is another question. In the approximate equivalent circuit, the leakage reactance is shown, whereas the linkage reactance is not. No, linkage is very much there. Please look at this approximate equivalent circuit what we had drawn. Definitely this is there. This is the mutual linking between the primary and secondary. It's very much there. Only thing is, instead of having it in between R1, X1 and R2, X2, it is all brought to the front side. Because we assume that these R1 plus R2 as well as X1 plus X2, for example, R1 plus R2 will be less than 1%. What I mean by less than 1% is R1 plus R2 multiplied by I1 rated will be less than 1% of V1 rated. What I mean is, if I'm going to have V1 to be 200 volts, R1 plus R2 multiplied by I1 rated will be less than 2 volts normally. So, if the drop is so little, you don't have to really worry about that being shifted beyond this point. There is nothing wrong. Similarly, X1 plus X2 normally will be less than 3%, 3 to 4%. So, because of which we can afford to shift RC and XM to the front, and it makes our calculation simpler. That's all. So, engineering is all about approximations, and with approximation, whatever results you are getting, if all of them are almost remaining similar to the practical results you get, then you don't have to worry. So we go by that underlying principle in engineering. I hope I have answered these two questions. How we can identify whether the transformer is shell type or core type? Unless you remove the covering of the transformer, you may not be able to see it. Generally, many transformers are completely surrounded by several tubes through which you circulate oil for cooling. Unless you completely remove the enclosure of the transformer, you may not be able to see. Generally, in shell type transformer, you would not be able to see the windings at all. Most of the times, it may be covered completely by the core. Whereas in core type transformer, you would be able to see the windings around each of the limbs. So if I have one limb here and another limb here, you would be able to see the windings clearly in both the limbs in the case of core type construction. This is true for core type. Whereas in shell type, in all probability, you may not be able to see the windings at all. That's how you can recognize whether it is core type or shell type. Just by looking at it, it's difficult if you have the enclosure around the transformer. So one method of reducing leakage we had already seen, that is shell type construction. Let us try to look at the other methods of reducing leakage. So this is the second method, which is to make concentric windings or sandwiched windings. What I mean is, let us say this is actually our core. Repeatedly I am drawing the core because without that you can't even show a transformer. Let's say I have one winding like this. Let me call that as primary winding. My secondary winding may be surrounding that itself. What I mean is, if I try to make a cross section here and see, this is probably my core. I am going to have one set of winding which is probably the primary winding here. So whatever I am showing in green, let us say, is primary winding. And around that I am going to again have one more winding which I am showing as the secondary winding. The black color one, let me say, it is the secondary winding. So I'm going to have this as, say, secondary and this as primary. And this is the core. So this is how the windings are going to be arranged. This is why we call it as concentric winding. One circle inside is probably primary, the other circle is secondary. By the way, the core is also a conducting material. So the primary winding has to be insulated from the core. So if it is a low voltage winding, it is easier to insulate because higher the voltage, thicker will be the insulation. Then it will be difficult because you have to make very, very thick insulation, and to wind it around the core as inner circle, it is going to be more of effort. Whereas if this is high voltage winding, anyway the circle is becoming bigger. So naturally thicker winding, it will be easier for you to wind it outside rather than the inside. So normally high voltage winding will be put on the outside concentric circle, outward concentric circle, and low voltage winding will be in the inward concentric circle. So you can make concentric winding like this so that whatever is the flux that is flowing through this limb, it will link both primary and secondary. What I will do is to have the secondary winding spread out here also, then this has to be connected together. Similarly, the primary winding will also be put here and that will also be connected together like this. So I am having both primary and secondary distributed in both the limbs so that hardly any leakage happens. The leakage flux is whatever links only the primary or secondary. If it links both of them, I will not call it as leakage. So this is essentially going to minimize the leakage or the flux which will link only with the primary or secondary. On the other hand, sandwiched winding is, let me show it in shell type construction. So let us say this is my shell type constructed transformer. What I can do is to have, maybe this is my primary, again some more portion of primary. Maybe this is my secondary and there is some more portion of the secondary. So these two will be connected together and similarly these two will be connected together. Okay, so the green color one is the primary, let us say, and the blue color one is secondary. You can see that they are arranged one after another like what we do in a sandwich. So first is primary, then secondary, then again primary, then again secondary. So all of them are arranged in a sandwiched fashion. When they are arranged in sandwiched fashion, if a flux is going like this, the flux necessarily have to link both primary and secondary. There is no other way out, so there is hardly any leakage. So this is essentially sandwiched winding. When you are actually arranging one after another or one above the other and so on. So this is sandwiched winding. One more method of reducing leakage is to make the air gap or window long and thin. You can make out that here the window is really not long and thin. I can make it long and thin by probably making it like this. I can make one window like this, another window like this. Now it has become very long and thin, and I'm going to have the overall shell type construction like this. So you can see that this is really long as compared to what I'm seeing here. If I make the air gap long, the reluctance increases because the reluctance is equal to L by mu A. Mu is, for the air gap, is mu naught, right? And L is the length of the air gap, and A is the area of cross section, what I see here. So if I make it thin and long, area of cross section is going to decrease and L is going to increase, because of which the reluctance will increase. If the reluctance increases, obviously the flux will try to flow through less reluctance path. Just like how the current will flow through less resistance path, the flux will try to flow through less reluctance path. So it will try to avoid the larger reluctance path, which is the air gap. So flux through air gap will decrease. So there are three methods essentially adopted. The first method, whatever we saw, basically was to use shell type construction. The second method, so this is the shell type construction. The second method, what we saw, was to use either concentric winding or sandwiched winding. And the third method, what we saw, was to increase the length and area, reduce the area of the window, which is the air gap window, so that the leakage flux will decrease. So these are the three methods of reducing leakage flux. When we reduce the leakage flux, automatically I'm going to have X1 and X2 decreasing if leakage flux decreases. So we are going to have less voltage drop across X1 and X2. So if I try to look at what is available at the terminal of the transformer, it is V2 or V2 dash. And what I apply is V1. So this difference, I should not say V2 dash minus V1, I should have rather written V1 minus V2 dash, because V2 dash is the voltage available after the voltage drop. So V1 minus V2 dash is the total voltage drop within the transformer. And we want to minimize this so that whatever I apply, most of it is available at the terminals of the transformer. So this brings us to the performance indices or indicators of the transformer. So if you are given a transformer, if you really want to know whether it is a good transformer or bad transformer, there should be some kind of performance parameter that we need to compare. The first performance parameter is efficiency. And the second performance parameter is voltage regulation. These are the two major performance parameters we see for a transformer to determine whether it is a good transformer or bad transformer. Efficiency, as usual, is decided by, while transferring equivalent circuit parameters from, on the top, okay. How do we decide the minimal window size required to avoid the leakage reactance in window? See, one thing is you cannot avoid leakage reactance completely. That is for sure. There will be always some amount of leakage. You can't help it. So the thing is that we want to minimize the leakage reactance. That's all. So you have to essentially calculate what is the XM value. XM value you can calculate based on whatever is basically XM you can calculate based on, this is essentially 2 pi f Lm. So I have to worry about Lm only. Lm is N1 square divided by the reluctance. So reluctance of the core, this is what is Lm. And if I try to look at L1, which is the leakage reactance of the primary winding, it will be N1 square divided by reluctance of the air gap. Air gap is actually whatever is your window length and thickness, that is what is going to contribute towards this. Now, the relationship between these two essentially tells me what is the fraction of LL1 compared to LM. That's what tells me how much is the percentage leakage reactance. So, by adjusting the length and window in proportion to whatever I am getting as LM, that will make sure basically that I am keeping the leakage reactance under control. So, it is very difficult to give an absolute figure. Rather than that, I have to look at it in relation to what is Lm. So I should say essentially LL1 divided by Lm will be equal to reluctance of air gap divided by, rather reluctance of the core divided by reluctance of air gap. Right? This is how I can calculate. I hope I have answered the question. So there is one more question. Is the number of turns of the transformer, is the number of turns in the transformer affect the leakage flux in the transformer? I would say directly it may not impact, but definitely the number of turns in the transformer indirectly decides what is the size of the window, how much length I require in the window. So in one sense it affects, if not directly, but still it, in one sense it affects because of the fact that you have to look at the complete length of the window in terms of how many turns I have to accommodate. So depending upon the number of turns I have to accommodate, I might have to increase the length of the window. So in one sense it does affect. How we decide the size of limb in transformer? So the limb in transformer essentially is decided based on the area of cross section, rather is decided based on the flux, operating flux. So I can say operating flux is decided by E equal to 4.44 F phi into number of turns. So phi is equal to E divided by 4.44 Fn. So if I know phi, I can write this as B into A. And B is whatever is the maximum permissible flux density of the core material. So if I know what is the maximum permissible flux density of the core material, from that I would be able to calculate what is the area of cross section. So area of cross section is determined right away. And if I have chosen a particular number of turns based on my turns ratio, in that case, I have to make sure that the length of the core is sufficient enough to accommodate all those turns. That's what is the ideal criteria. So the area of cross section is based on the flux and the flux density of the core material, and number of turns indirectly decide the length of the core material, core limb basically. Right? Any other question? So let us now try to take a look at the efficiency. So the efficiency is basically defined by output power divided by input power. So I can say this is output divided by input plus losses. So if I am talking about losses, The losses actually have two portions. One is core loss, the other one is copper loss. We already talked about R1 and R2. So copper losses are contributed to by R1 and R2. This is hysteresis and eddy current loss. Okay, so we know clearly these are the losses. Now, I can say that if my output, let us take for example a 2.2 kVA 220 volts by 110 volts transformer. Okay, let's say the core losses, I am just arbitrarily taking some value. Let's say core losses are 100 watts. And let's say copper losses at full load condition maybe are 150 watts. What I mean by full load is when the transformer delivers rated power output or rated kVA output. So when it is delivering 2.2 kVA, primary current will be 2200 divided by 220, which will be 10 ampere approximately. Secondary current would be approximately 20 amperes. So these are all approximately we are calculating under full load condition. If I have to calculate the efficiency for this particular transformer, I should know what is the power factor of the load. I would like to mention one point here. Any machine which is giving the output in the form of electrical output, like a synchronous generator or a transformer, or if I am using an induction machine as an induction generator, all of them, the output will be specified in the form of kVA. So kVA is the output specification of any AC machine whose output is electrical power. Whereas if we are talking about motor, the motor's output is mechanical power. So mechanical power output will always be specified in terms of kilowatt rather than kVA. So kVA comes as the specification for any electrical machine whose output is electrical power. Motor is also an electrical machine, but its output is mechanical power. So whenever I am having an electrical machine, AC machine, which is delivering electrical power output, then I have to specify it in terms of kVA, because I may connect R load, I may connect RL load, I may connect RC load. Correspondingly, my power factor is going to vary. I really don't know what kind of load is going to be connected to my electrical machine. So if it is R load, the power factor will be unity. If it is RL load, the power factor will be less than unity. So for R load, the power factor is going to be unity. For RL load, the power factor is going to be less than unity, but it will be lagging. And for RC load, again the power factor is less than unity, but it is going to be leading. So I can have any one of these types of loads, because of which I am definitely going to have, the efficiency somewhat changing, because the efficiency is always calculated in terms of output in watts divided by input in watts. So if I calculate for a 2200 volt ampere 220 by 110 volts transformer, rated load at unity power factor, what is the efficiency? This is what I want to calculate. We had denominator is output plus losses.
Yes. Output is equal to, no, output is input minus losses. This is output plus losses. I hope output divided by output plus losses, because input power is equal to output plus losses. Thank you for pointing out the mistake. I'm sorry. So this is output plus losses is input power. Clearly. Suppose we want 100 volts by 400 volts 1 kVA transformer, then N1 by N2 is 1 by 4. We can choose any set of number of turns in the transformer which gives the ratio 1 by 4. But which value is better preferred? It depends upon whether you are looking at the size of the transformer in terms of, if it is a 1 kVA transformer, right? And whether it is at 50 hertz or 100 hertz or 4 kilohertz, all those things matter, because that will decide basically how much is the area of cross section of the core. Once you decide the area of cross section of the core, you would like to choose the window, that is the complete window, length of the window versus the breadth of the window, as per minimizing the reluctance of the core material and maximizing the reluctance of the air gap. So this essentially falls into design. To be honest, I am not a transformer designer. I am more of an analysis person. So I would say, if you want to refer to this more, there are transformer design handbooks, which I can probably bring some of the references by tomorrow and I can display it. That's not a problem. Okay. But in general, you have to be careful about the length to breadth ratio for any window, so that you maximize the reluctance of the air gap or the window and minimize the reluctance of the core. That's what you are planning to do. Transformer rating in kVA, and it is independent of power factor. How? See, it is not independent of power factor. kVA is independent of power factor, but you don't know what kind of load you are going to connect. You don't know, because as a user, I can use resistance load, I can use RL load, I can use RC load. I never know how it is going to be, because of which I am definitely going to leave it to the consumer to decide what kind of load he or she is going to connect. So that's the reason why the rating is given in terms of kVA. It puts a limit on what is the maximum current deliverability for the transformer. For example, a 2200 VA 220 by 110 volts transformer will essentially, it can deliver only 10 ampere from the primary side, maximum. This is the maximum current it can deliver, RMS. And similarly 20 amperes from the secondary side. So I am putting a limit on the maximum current that it can carry. So now to go back to calculation of efficiency, I can say basically that at unity power factor, so 2200 multiplied by 1, which is VI cos phi. I hope you understand. That is what is the output power. Now input will be 2200 multiplied by 1 plus, that is output, plus losses. Losses, I think we said as 100 watts for core loss and 150 watts for copper loss. Clearly, the copper loss is not influenced by the reactance. There is one question from one of them. Is there any effect from the reactance on efficiency? The efficiency will not be influenced by the reactance, because this copper loss is influenced only by R1 and R2. And the core loss is influenced only by hysteresis and eddy current. So directly your X1 and X2 will not be, affecting the efficiency. So here I can calculate this as 2200 divided by 2200 plus 100 plus 150. So this is 2450. If I want it in terms of percentage, I have to multiply this by 100. So I will get this as a percentage efficiency. So this is how you calculate the efficiency of a transformer. I would request you to calculate the efficiency of the transformer when it is delivering 50% load
at 0.8 power factor. Please try to calculate. So first thing is I had asked you to calculate the efficiency for this 2.2 kVA 220 by 110 volts transformer at 0.8 power factor 50% load. Okay, and we had given the core loss to be 100 watts and copper loss to be 150 watts. The first thing I would like you guys to appreciate is that this 150 watts is I square R1 plus R2 dash. I may call this as I1 square multiplied by R1 plus R2 dash. If I say this is rated, this current should also be rated current. So that means if at 100% load, that is at 2.2 kVA, the current on the primary side will be 10 ampere. But at 50% load, that is at 1.1 kVA, the current will be only 5 ampere. So if I try to calculate what is I1 square R1 plus R2 dash at 50% load, it will be whatever is the copper loss at rated current multiplied by 5 divided by 10 whole square, because 5 ampere is the current at present, whereas 10 ampere was the current at rated condition. So I will have this as 0.5 whole square multiplied by 150 watts. This is what will be the copper loss at 50%. Now, if I want to calculate the efficiency, first of all, I have to calculate what is the output. Output will be 2200 multiplied by 50%, which is 0.5 multiplied by the power factor 0.8. So many watts. This is what I will get as the output. So if this is my output, I can calculate the input to be output plus losses. Please note that iron loss will be a constant if voltage and frequency are constants. And voltage and frequencies are generally constant in a transformer. We never operate it at any other voltage or any other frequency. If it is a 220 volts 50 hertz transformer, we'll operate it only at 220 volts and 50 hertz. So let me calculate input, which is equal to output, that is 2200 multiplied by 0.5 multiplied by 0.8, that is the output, plus losses. So that is PC plus PCU at 50%. So I can write this as 2200 multiplied by 0.5 multiplied by 0.8 plus constant loss, which is actually 100 watts, plus copper loss, which is 150 multiplied by 0.5 square, 0.25 actually, right? So I'm going to have this as the input. So efficiency will be 2200 multiplied by 0.5 multiplied by 0.8 divided by 2200 multiplied by 0.5 multiplied by 0.8 plus 100 plus 150 into 0.25. This is going to be the efficiency overall, right? I hope this is coming out to be 86% or whatever you guys have written. Many of you guys have written. So this will be the efficiency of the transformer at 50% load at a power factor of 0.8. Okay. So What we can say is at 100% load at unity power factor, if you calculate the efficiency, and if you calculate the efficiency at 50% load at unity power factor, it will be different values because the copper loss will come down, whereas the constant loss will remain the same. Now let us try to look at, one of the questions what has been asked by one of your classmates, and the question is efficiencies of power and distribution transformer. Power transformers are normally used in power stations. Power transformers are generally connected to generator. So if I say that this is the generator, I'm going to have power transformer here before it is being sent to the transmission line. So this is my transmission line. This is the power transformer. Generally, the generator will always be loaded or generating to the full extent. So this will be full generation or full load. So the transformer, power transformer will always be loaded to the fullest extent. Because of which the efficiency of the power transformer normally will be designed, it will be designed in such a way that efficiency of a power transformer is maximum, is normally at its maximum at 100% load or at full load. Whereas if I look at a distribution transformer, whether the distribution transformer is supplying to 10 houses or one house, it has to be always on. I cannot say that only one house is having electricity right now, they are not having anything on, others are not having anything on. So let me just switch off the distribution transformer. I can't say that. Distribution transformer will be energized all the time, that is 24/7. It cannot be turned off at any time, because of which I have to look at to what load this transformer is subjected to most of the times. That is, if I say that I'm talking about 24-hour day, and I'm trying to look at this, that for 16 hours maybe it is subjected to 50% load. For rest of the 2 hours it is it is subjected to 100% load. Another 2 hours it is subjected to probably 75% load. So most of the times if it is subjected to, let us say, 50%, then I should design the transformer in such a way that at 50% load it has maximum efficiency. This leads us to the discussion on maximum efficiency. So let us try to look at the condition for maximum efficiency. We already said that the efficiency is output divided by output plus losses. So let me write it like this: V2 I2 cos phi 2 or cos phi L divided by V2 I2 cos phi L plus constant loss plus PCU. So I can write this as PCU, I can write it as I2 square R equivalent. R equivalent being R1 plus R2 dash. This is what is R equivalent. So I can write efficiency is equal to V2 I2 cos phi 2 divided by V2 I2 cos phi 2 plus PC plus I2 square R equivalent. Let me divide the denominator as well as numerator by I2. So I will be able to write V2 cos phi 2 divided by V2 cos phi 2 plus PC by I2 plus I2 are equivalent. At what point the efficiency is maximum? That's what I want to calculate. And in this, my variable is I2. I2 is the variable that I am talking about because the load current can be 50%, the load current can be 100%, it can be 75%. So this is the variable as far as I am concerned. So I am going to say d eta divided by di2 equal to 0 at what value of I2. And this is the maximum efficiency condition. This is the condition for maximum efficiency. So let me try to write it again. I have V2 cos phi 2 divided by V2 cos phi 2 plus PC divided by I2 plus I2 are equivalent. This is what is efficiency. So d eta by di2 will yield, I am not going to have any factor involving I2 on the top, only at the bottom I have the factor involving I2. So if I just try to do that, this is I2 power minus 1, so I will have PC divided by I2 square, right, equal to R equivalent. This is what will be the condition corresponding to maximum efficiency. I hope all of you are familiar with calculus, so you should be able to differentiate. It should not be a problem. So PC equal to I2 square R equivalent. I2 square R equivalent is copper loss. So when copper loss is equal to constant loss, when copper loss equal to constant loss, at that load efficiency is maximum. Let's understand the gravity of this statement. When copper loss equal to constant loss, the efficiency is going to be maximum at that load. Let's consider the same 2200 VA 220 by 110 volts transformer we just looked at. There we said constant loss is 100 watts and copper loss at 100% load or full load is 150 watts. We said that at any other X percentage load, I am going to have the copper losses to be 150 multiplied by X square. This is what we wrote because it is proportional to I square. Copper losses are always proportional to I square. So this is what we wrote. Now what we have to see is at what X value the copper losses calculated at that X load is equal to 100 watts. So I should write basically 150 times X square equal to 100. So X will be equal to 100 divided by 150 square root. So I should say 1 by 1.5 square root of this will be my X. Can one of you calculate and tell me if you have the calculator? It will be, maybe this is 2/3, right? It is 2/3. So if it is 2/3, so that is about 0.66. So 0.66 square root will be approximately 0.8, I suppose. Roughly 0.8. I'm not saying it's exact, it will be approximately 0.8. So if this is 0.8, I can say that when the transformer delivers about 80% full load, then the efficiency will be maximum. That means this is a 2200 VA transformer. So 2200 VA transformer, this is the full load. So 80% full load is 2200 multiplied by 0.8 VA. This is the load at which roughly the efficiency will be maximum. So this is the condition for maximum efficiency. So for maximum efficiency, let me reiterate, for maximum efficiency, copper losses, constant losses should be equal to copper loss at that load. Right? So this is the condition for maximum efficiency. Now that we have seen the constant loss, copper loss and so on, the second performance index, which is actually voltage regulation. Let us try to look at that as well. Voltage regulation. I hope you have followed so far. Any questions? In copper loss, R equivalent should be taken with reference to secondary. Need not be. You can take R equivalent from the primary side or secondary side. The question is in copper loss, that is while calculating copper loss, R equivalent should be taken with reference to secondary. It is not true. You can take it with respect to primary or secondary. It doesn't matter because the power is invariant. Again, only thing is, if you are taking R equivalent in the primary side, make sure that the current is also calculated from the primary side. If you are taking R equivalent on the secondary side, make sure that the current is also calculated on the secondary side. That's all is the thing. Nothing more than that. Okay. We'll talk about all day efficiency in tomorrow's class. I don't want to talk about it today because let's finish. First of all, for a generalized transformer, what is voltage regulation and what is efficiency? Then we will worry about all day efficiency. There is one more question. Why we divide the equation by I2 to get the maximum efficiency? You need not divide by I2. You can even do V2 I2 cos phi 2 divided by V2 I2 cos phi 2 plus PC plus PCU. No problem. Only thing, there will be a second order term. If you look at the original expression, right, without division, please note that it is having I2 square here. When you differentiate a second order term, always things can be a little more difficult. Just to make it as a first order term, we are trying to divide it by I2 so that we get I2 R equivalent PC by I2. All of them are first order terms, nothing more than that. That is the reason why we are doing this. You don't have to divide by I2, it's not a must. If your previous sheet you wrote I2 square, but you took R equivalent with respect to primary. No. What you say is right. I agree. I could have written this as R equivalent dash rather than R equivalent. Either way, it doesn't matter. If I take I2 as it is, I have to take R equivalent dash. I agree. Okay. Whether we consider R equivalent or R equivalent dash, it is a constant for a given transformer. We have determined it and it is a constant. So it should not matter. I agree. If I am taking I2 dash, then I should have taken R equivalent. If I am taking I2, I should have taken R equivalent dash because everything is seen from the secondary side. Either way is fine. Right? Okay. I hope that question is answered. What is the neutralized current? What is naturalized current? In transformer. No, neutral current in a transformer we never talk about in a single phase transformer. It is there only in a three-phase transformer which is Y connected. So neutral current is not relevant when we are talking about single phase transformer. Okay. So I don't think that is under the preview of this discussion. If we are talking about three-phase transformer, yes, then we'll have to talk about neutral current. Case three-phase, in case three-phase, TRE means three-phase transformer.
Acha, you are asking in the case of three-phase transformer, what is the neutral current? Let us probably not diversify into three-phase transformer because we are talking about single-phase transformer. When we are discussing three-phase, we will try to look at it. Okay? If it is all right with you guys.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
My question is, in distribution transformer, load is continuously varying from time to time. Is there any effect on transformer efficiency due to these changes in load?
The changes in load will definitely cause an efficiency of the transformer. That's why what we are trying to do is to look at what is the time duration for which that particular load is prevailing. So let us say I have 50% load prevailing for 18 hours out of 24 hours, for example. And let us say only for 2 hours it is on full load, another 2 hours it is on no load, another 2 hours maybe it is on 75% load. In which case, at 50% load condition, I would like to design the transformer to maximum efficiency. I would like to design the transformer to obtain maximum efficiency at 50% load condition if 50% load is the one which is going to be prevalent on the transformer for most of the day. Definitely efficiency will change, no doubt. At 50% load it will be X square times PCU, that will be the losses. PCU is the rated copper loss. So definitely efficiency will change, no doubt. But when I design or when I procure a distribution transformer, I should procure a transformer such that its efficiency will be maximum at 50% load. Right? Did I answer your question?
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, welcome.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
How can we bring the variable losses equal to constant losses?
See, the variable loss equal to constant loss will prevail if I am going to adjust the resistance, for example. Right? Because the variable losses depend upon resistance value. So when I design the transformer, whether I am concentrating more on making the magnetic circuit more efficient, the magnetic circuit will decide what is the constant loss. Whether I am making the permeability high, whether I am trying to make the hysteresis loop smaller, because for ferrite, the hysteresis loop will be different, for steel it will be different, for iron it will be different. So I can choose the material such that my constant losses are under my control based on the hysteresis loop area. And resistance is under my control depending upon the thickness of the wire and that we are using. So I can design the transformer to suit my needs. Right? Got it? Yes? So let us now go to the discussion on voltage regulation. Let's say I have a transformer here. This is the primary. I am applying V1 volts and I2, and I have connected a load ZL. The voltage here is V2. The terminal voltage here is V2. V1 minus V2 dash. V2 dash is the voltage as I visualize the secondary voltage from the primary side. V1 minus V2 dash is the voltage drop within the transformer. So, if I say that voltage drop divided by either V2 dash or V1, I would say V1 rated. This is actually the regulation of the transformer. If I multiply that by 100, I would call it as percentage regulation of the transformer. So percentage regulation of the transformer gives you an idea how much is getting dropped within the transformer itself. So it is a performance index of the transformer. Let us take typically one example. Let's take the same 2200 VA, 220 volts, 110 volts transformer. Let me take, maybe my R1 is probably 1 ohm and R2 is about 0.6 ohms. I'm just taking arbitrarily some values. X1, let us say, is 1.2 ohm and X2 is probably, like 0.65 ohm. Okay, so I'm just taking some values arbitrarily. Now, I have to calculate what is the voltage drop that is taking place under full load condition. So, under full load condition, current I1 is equal to 10 ampere. So, I have to say the voltage drop within the resistances and leakage reactances of the transformer. I can calculate that to be 1 plus 1.2 multiplied by 2 square, because N1 by N2 the whole square is 2 square. This is the resistance plus J into, I should say 1.2, no, I'm sorry, this is 0.6. 1 plus 0.6 multiplied by 2 square, J into 1.2 plus 0.65 multiplied by 2 square. Am I correct? I am essentially looking at the resistances put together with the turns ratio transformation and reactances put together with turns ratio transformation. So this is my X2 dash, this is my X1, this is my R2 dash, this is my R1. So that's all I have written. Okay, so all of them we have written together. So 2 square is 4. So 4 multiplied by 0.6. So this is 1 plus 2.4, that is 3.4 plus J multiplied by, this is 0.65 multiplied by 4. So 465s are how much? 260 I suppose. So 2.6 plus 1.2. So that is 3.8. So this is what is the total impedance of the transformer. This has to be multiplied by 10 amperes. So I have to multiply this by 10 amperes. Okay. So this is ohm, that is ampere. So the total voltage drop will be here. This will be the voltage drop that I will be getting. Let me write down this again. So I'm going to have 3.4 plus J 3.8 multiplied by 10 volts. So I can say 34 plus J 38 is the total voltage drop, which is very, very high. So I have taken the parameters in such a way that extremely large voltage drop takes place. I am sure you can convert this into polar form. So I'm going to have 34 square plus 38 square root, and angle is tan inverse of 38 by 34. I'm sure you can calculate this. That's not a problem. So what I am getting here is going to be approximately some 50 or 60 volts. Definitely. I will have more than that. So out of 220 volts I have applied, internal drop is going to be something like 60 volts, because of which I am going to get only about 160 volts, nothing more than that. So this transformer has a huge voltage drop, and the secondary side voltage is going to be really, really small. So the regulation is very high. So I have to calculate the regulation to be now 60 divided by 220 multiplied by 100 is the percentage regulation in this particular case. So it is definitely not a good transformer. So a transformer which is good should have very less amount of resistances. So if resistances and leakage reactances are small, then regulation is better for a transformer. So I should say the resistance will contribute to both regulation and efficiency, whereas leakage reactance will contribute mainly only to regulation. It will not contribute to efficiency at all. So let us try to see whether we would be able to obtain a proper expression for regulation. So let me first of all for that draw the phasor diagram of a transformer. When I draw a phasor diagram of a transformer, I should include no load as well as load conditions into account. So before I start, let me reiterate that no load current of a transformer, which is I0, is generally less than 5% of rated current. So if the rated current is, for example, 10 ampere, what we have taken, I0 is going to be less than about 0.5 amperes. It will be less than 0.5 amperes, right? So it is going to be really small that we don't have to worry too much about the no load current when we are talking about rated load condition. So let us first of all try to get the complete phasor diagram. So let us say this is my V2 or V1, both of them roughly. Now I'm going to have the magnetizing current at 90 degrees compared to this. It is going to lag behind by 90 degrees because it is an inductive current. This is going to be my IC, which is the core loss component of current. When I add these two, I am going to get the total no load current I0. That is going to be my I0. So I0 will have a power factor which is determined by how much is IC and how much is IM. So this is going to be my phi naught or no load power factor. That's what I have drawn. Now, depending upon what kind of load I have connected, if it is inductive load, for example, maybe my current will be like this. This is what is I2 dash. If I call this as V2 dash, please note that I am drawing everything from the primary side. So this is V2 dash, this is I2 dash. If this is I2 dash, I am definitely going to have, first of all, I2 R2, which will be in phase with I2 as the voltage drop. So this is I2 dash R equivalent dash. Okay, R equivalent. And then I am going to have perpendicular to that will be I2 dash X equivalent. So I have overall drop what is taking place as I2 dash R equivalent plus J times I2 dash X equivalent. So I will call this as I2 dash Z equivalent. So that is what is I2 dash Z equivalent. Now what I have to do is, if I assume that this is the terminal voltage, to this I have to add this I2 dash Z equivalent. When I add this together, what I get ultimately is my V1 or what is the voltage applied to V1. So now I'm going to have, please note that I have taken only I2 dash. Actually, if I want to be more accurate, I should have added I0 also to I2 dash. Only then I will get I1. Please imagine the equivalent circuit of the transformer. I essentially had V1 being applied here. I had IM here. I had IC going through RC, right? And if I look at it, this is where I had R equivalent, I had X equivalent, and I had the load here, which is ZL dash, and I called this as V2 dash. If you may recall, this is my I2 dash, which is specified by this black color vector. Now, whatever is the drop that has taken place in R equivalent and X equivalent, that is specified by this. Okay. Now, when I add to V2 dash this, I am saying that I am getting V1. But the current what I am getting here is V1, agreed. But I also have to realize that there is a separate current I1, and I1 essentially consists of both IM, IC, that is the no load current, and also I2 dash. So to I2 dash, if I add this current, which is I0, let me draw the I0 again here. This is I0. When I look at them together, this resultant, what I am getting, this is what is I1. So I should say I2 dash plus I0 is equal to I1. All of them are vectors. So I am drawing those arrows on the top. All of them are vectors. So I2 dash plus I0 is equal to I1, and I0 itself is consisting of two vectors. One is IM, the other one is IC. So this is the complete phasor diagram of the transformer. With this, let us try to draw the major portion that is corresponding to regulation. So let me try to again draw the phasor diagram corresponding to regulation. So I am again looking at this as V2 dash. Let me say probably I have this as I2 dash. Now to this, whatever is the phase angle here, let me call that as phi L, or the load power factor angle. Now this I2 dash and I2 dash are equivalent, will be in phase with each other. Perpendicular to that, I should draw I2 dash X equivalent. Now, when I add V2 plus I2 dash R equivalent plus J I2 dash X equivalent, what I get is V1. This is what is V1. Now, V1 minus V2 dash is regulation or voltage drop. Let me try to finish this I2Z equivalent. The dotted line is I2Z equivalent. If I look at what angle this is, this angle I can call it as phi equivalent. Phi equivalent is tan inverse of X equivalent divided by R equivalent. Okay. Now rather than writing V1 minus V2 dash, let me probably take only the horizontal component of V1. This is the horizontal component of V1. So I can say that V1 equal to V2 dash plus, if I call this as O and this point as P, OP. V1 will be V2 dash plus OP. Now OP is what? OP is basically adjacent side of the right angle triangle OPQ. Okay. So I can write this as V2 dash plus IZ equivalent or I2 dash Z equivalent. That is what is the hypotenuse. So the adjacent side will be this angle. This angle is This is phi L, this is phi 2. So I can call this as phi equivalent minus phi L. That angle is phi equivalent minus phi L. So I can write this as I2 dash Z equivalent cos of phi equivalent minus phi L. Okay. So from the phasor diagram, I can write roughly the expression for V1 minus V2 dash as I2 dash Z equivalent cos of phi equivalent minus phi L. So let me expand this. I2 dash Z equivalent cos phi equivalent cos phi L plus Z equivalent sin phi equivalent sin phi L. So let me write this again. I2 dash Z equivalent cos phi equivalent is R equivalent. Cos phi L plus Z equivalent sin phi equivalent is X equivalent. X equivalent sin phi L. So this is the expression for voltage drop in a transformer. So if I have what is the R equivalent value, if I have what is the X equivalent value, and if I have the power factor of the load, and if I know what is the percentage load, I should be able to get the voltage drop in a transformer. Let us take for example again the same 2200 VA 220 volts by 110 volts transformer. Of course, we had taken very large values. If you may recall, we took R1 to be 1 ohm, R2 to be 0.6 ohm. Similarly, X1 to be I think 1.2 ohm and X2 to be 0.65 ohm. This is what we took as the values. Let me just go with the same values. It doesn't matter. Okay. Let me calculate the voltage drop at 50% load at 0.8 lagging power factor. Now at 50% load, the current I2 dash will be, instead of 10 ampere, it will be 5 ampere because it is 50% load. If it is full load, it would have been 10 ampere. It is 50% load, it is 5 ampere, right? So I can say that the voltage drop will be equal to 5 ampere multiplied by R equivalent. Let me calculate R equivalent here itself. How much is R equivalent? R equivalent is 1 plus 0.6 times 4. We already calculated this, if you may recall. So this is 3.4 ohms. So I can say 3.4 multiplied by 0.8. That is R equivalent cos phi L. Now what is X equivalent? Let's try to see what is X equivalent. X equivalent is 1.2 plus 0.65 times 4. I think we calculated this already. This is 2.6 plus 1.2, that is 3.8 ohm again. So I can write this as plus 3.8 multiplied by sin phi L. Cos phi L is 0.8, sin phi L is going to be 0.6. I hope you remember that 0.8 square plus 0.6 square root will be 1. Sin square theta plus cos square theta. So this is what it is. So this is the voltage drop at 0.8 power factor lagging. So I'm going to have essentially 5 multiplied by 3.4 into 0.8 and 3.8 into 0.6. This is going to be 8 4s are 32, 8 3s are 24, 24 plus 3, 27. So I'm going to have 2.72 volts, and this is going to be 8, 6 3s are 18, 18 plus 4, 22. So this will be 2.28. This is what is the overall voltage drop. So this is 5 multiplied 5, 525 volts drop that I am going to get in this particular case at 50% load that we are talking about. So 25 volts is the voltage drop. So I can say regulation percentage will be 25 divided by 220. More than 10%. So which is definitely not a good transformer index. It is not a good transformer. That's what it says. Now, if you had looked at this phasor diagram, we looked at this angle as phi equivalent minus phi L. Phi L was lagging. If phi L had been leading, I would have had the current in this direction. This is phi L when the current is leading. In that case, this angle would have become phi equivalent plus phi L. In this case, it would have become phi equivalent plus phi L. So the sign of this angle changes between plus and minus if I am having a lagging power factor load or leading power factor load. Because of which I am going to have this sign also. It can be plus or minus. It will not be plus always. If it is lagging power factor load, it is plus. If it is leading power factor load, it will be minus. So that is the reason why, again, the regulation value for lagging and leading power factor loads will be different. In one case, it will be plus. In the other case, it will be minus. If I calculate for the same thing for a leading power factor load, it would have come out to be 5 into 2.72 minus 2.28. This is what would have been the regulation or voltage drop. This is for leading power factor load, 0.8 leading power factor load. This would have been the regulation. Very clearly, the voltage drop will be much less. So for leading power factor load, the voltage drops are lower as compared to lagging power factor load. Lagging power factor loads will always have a higher voltage drop, whereas leading power factor loads will always have a lesser voltage drop, because in this case, if you look at the expression again, the resistance component will always have a positive voltage drop. The reactance component can have a positive or negative voltage drop depending upon whether it is leading power factor or lagging power factor. So these two can cancel out with each other if I am talking about sin phi L to be negative, which is the case with leading power factor. That's the reason why voltage regulation or the voltage drop will be less or voltage regulation will be better when I'm talking about, leading power factor loads. So this takes us almost to the conclusion of today's lecture. I wanted to work out some problems, but I am thinking that tomorrow I'll take up basically tomorrow's also what I am going to take up roughly. Let me tell you. In tomorrow's class, I am planning to take up OC and SC test and their calculations. Open circuit and short circuit test and their calculations. After which we will try to do 1 or 2 problems on basic transformers equation, and also we'll try to do some problems on OC-SC test, voltage regulation and efficiency. We will try to do a few problems. Then after that we will talk about all day efficiency, and if we have the time we will talk about instrument transformer. That is PT and CT, potential transformers and current transformers. That's it. Okay. So this is what is the plan for tomorrow's class, and the last 1 hour I will be spending on some tutorial problems which will actually give you insight into working out more problems on transformer. So now if you have any questions, when we can get zero and maximum voltage regulation? Zero voltage regulation will happen when you have I2 times R equivalent cos phi L equal to I2 dash times X equivalent sin phi L. When both of them cancel out with each other, then you are going to get, zero voltage regulation. I hope you understand. What I am trying to say is that I have the voltage drop to be I2 dash into R equivalent sin phi L, and I have X equivalent, cos phi L and sin phi L. I should draw this as plus or minus. So plus sign is for lagging loads and minus sign is for leading loads. This is the voltage drop. When is the voltage drop equal to 0? Voltage drop cannot be 0 for lagging loads because both of them are adding up together. Voltage drop can be 0 for lagging loads only if I2 dash is equal to 0. So that is on no load condition. No load or open circuit condition. Only under this condition I am going to have zero voltage regulation. For leading loads, right? When I2 dash R equivalent cos phi L equal to I2 dash X equivalent sin phi L. This is when I am going to have voltage drop equal to 0. Right? So this is the zero voltage regulation condition with leading loads. This is the zero voltage regulation condition with leading loads. Okay. So this is true only for leading loads. Obviously for lagging loads, only for no load condition, I will have zero voltage regulation. The last question, one more thing what they had asked was, one of the students had asked was maximum voltage regulation condition. So when is the maximum voltage regulation occurring? So this we had said basically that voltage drop, we had written the expression as, if you may recall, I2 Z equivalent or I2 dash Z equivalent cos of phi equivalent minus phi L. This is what we had written as the voltage drop expression. When is this expression maximum? You guys can tell me. When will this expression be maximum? Obviously not for I2 dash equal to 0. When will this be maximum? Can you guys tell me? Audio is muted. That's what somebody has written. So very clearly this expression is maximum when phi equivalent equal to phi L. When phi equivalent equal to phi L, then the voltage drop is maximum. Right? The voltage drop is maximum when phi equivalent equal to phi L. That is, whatever is tan inverse of X equivalent by R equivalent, that is equal to load power factor angle. That is when you are going to get the two under lagging power factor. Clearly, only when lagging power factor is happening, we have phi equivalent minus phi L. Otherwise, we will have phi equivalent plus phi L. So the entire thing sign itself will change. So load power factor angle equal to tan inverse of X equivalent by R equivalent. That is when lagging power factor, during lagging power factor condition, that is when maximum voltage regulation occurs. So tomorrow's class, we will also try to look at voltage regulation versus load. This graph also we will see in tomorrow's class. So tomorrow's class we have open circuit test, short circuit test, then how to do the calculations during voltage circuit, open circuit test and short circuit test. Then we are going to look at all day efficiency. We'll also look at voltage regulation versus load graph. Then we will work out a few problems. So this is the plan for tomorrow's class. Okay. So thank you for your attention.